How's it going? And Happy New Year's. It's New Year's Eve. I'm about to embark on a whole new adventure here. Ever since I was very young, like 6 or 7 years old, when I went to a bakery on an elementary school field trip, I've been fascinated with bread. Love bread of all kinds, but I've never made any. Never took the time to learn, and now, as we all know, with COVID, we have time to learn new things, and I've been spending the last year learning lots of new things. But the next thing I'm going to learn how to do is I'm going to learn how to bake bread, and I'm going to share my very first experience tonight with you baking a loaf of white bread. I've never done it before, but as you know, I've been researching it. I've spent the last probably 3 to 4 weeks researching how to make bread, watching videos of people making bread, and one thing I have learned is that there is no one recipe for doing this. There is no one temperature for baking this. There is no one anything other than a lot of it is through experience, look and feel, understanding what you're doing because you've done it a million times. But we're going to do it for the first time, and we're going to see how it turns out. Now, some of the recipes I saw were very basic, including just flour, salt, water, and yeast. That sounds almost like Play-Doh to me. So I don't really want to make bread out of that. I'm going to try something a little bit more involved. The one we're making has 1 cup of milk, 2 tablespoons of butter, 1.5 cups of warm water. Not hot, of course, because if it gets over 110 degrees, we could kill our yeast. We don't want to do that. 2 packets of instant yeast, 2 tablespoons of sugar, 1 tablespoon of salt, 6 to 7 cups of flour. Now the reason that is a range, we find because at different temperatures of room, different altitudes, different amounts of humidity, all these variables can mix in to determine exactly how the composition of the dough turns out. And so basically, you put in the main ingredients besides the flour, and then you mix in the flour until it's of a consistency that you're familiar with. So with that being said, we're going to start making this bread. So our first step is we're going to take the milk, butter, salt, and sugar, and we're going to warm it up. Now we're not going to heat it up. We don't want it to be over 110 degrees because that'll kill our yeast. So we're going to warm those up together enough to melt the butter and to where it's just warm. And we're going to start with that and build from there. So let's go ahead and get that part done. This, by the way, will make 2 loaves. So we'll start out with a cup of milk. Two tablespoons of butter. And we're going to start with that and just warm it up enough to melt the butter. The next thing we're going to do is hydrate the yeast. So what we're going to do is take a 1/2 cup of warm water and put it in a bowl with the yeast, and then we're going to stir that in in order to declump it. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to whisk the 2 packets of yeast into this warm water, and so it can start hydrating. All right, we'll let that sit for a few minutes and start to activate. All right, the next thing we're going to do is just start building our batter out. So this is my mixing bowl from my new stand mixer, and pretty excited about this. I've never really used it, so we're going to have a new experience with that as well. So we're going to add the sugar, salt, and the remaining 1 cup of water, and mix it together really well. So that is 1 tablespoon of salt and 2 tablespoons of sugar. Okay, we're going to add 1 cup of warm water to that and mix it. Just want to put out a reminder, by the way, this is not a tutorial. I've never made bread before, so I am in no position to be teaching you how to make bread. I'm just sharing my first experience with you as I do this, because I don't know, it looks like it's going to be fun. All right, the next step is we're to check the saucepan of milk and butter. The butter has melted. It's a little warm. But we are now to add it to the contents of the pot. And we mix. Now, we need to let the yeast sit a couple more minutes while we're finishing this up. We're waiting to see some activity on the surface of the water till we know that it's activated. I'm going to get a thermometer, and before I put the yeast water into this mixture, I want to make sure it's not too hot for it. So we'll have that ready, and then we'll go ahead and, I guess, mix in the yeast. Alright, it's been 5 minutes. I've run out of patience with the yeast. We are going to put it in. It is bubbling. It has created a little bit of a thing on the surface, which is indicative of a active yeast. So let's go ahead and put it in the bowl and move on to the next step. Alright, we'll go ahead and pour the yeast mixture into the bowl with the milk, sugar, salt, and water. Let's make sure we get all that good yeast out of there. I have a feeling we're going to need it. And the next thing we do is start mixing in the bread flour, 1 cup at a time, until the mixture starts to get stiff. Once it gets to that point, we'll start using the stand mixer with the kneading arm, and we'll let that roll, and we'll be able to watch that and see how the dough is setting up, whether or not it's picking up all the flour off the sides, whether or not it's firming up. So we'll get about 5 cups probably in before we have to go and start with the mixing. And from there, we just have to try to, get a feel for what we want the dough to look like. All right, we'll start with this 1 cup at a time and start stirring it in. Three cups, and it's kind of like pancake batter. Alright, 4 cups. And 5. And we'll stop there. From here out, we'll work through the stand mixer. Alright, let's go get the stand mixer and we'll put it into action. One of the nice things about this mixer is it's got this lid, and you can set it up so that it's got this opening, and you can pour things into it through the opening. It's really kind of cool. Alright, we've got the kneading arm on. We're going to lower the motor into place. Okay. And the lid is on. Now, my understanding is we want this to be on 1 or 2, very slow while it's doing its early mixing, and then later on we'll go ahead and bump it up when it needs to be sped up more. Alright, let's go ahead and get it started on level 2. So we're going to keep an eye on this as it's working and see if it starts balling up. If it doesn't, we'll go ahead and start adding more flour, which we can expect we're going to do. Okay, so it's not balling up. We're going to go ahead and add a little more flour. Alright, so it looks like it's trying really hard to pick up the flour and stuff off the sides, but it's just not quite there. So I'm going to add a little bit more flour to it. Now add a tablespoon at a time. Okay, so it looks like it's got a good ball getting started. I think we're going to let it knead a little bit and see what happens to it. You can over-knead this. This is a problem with the stand mixers, so we want to avoid over-kneading for sure. Okay, I think that's good. We're going to let this knead for 5 minutes, and then we'll come back and we'll turn it out and then put it into a bowl for the first rise, whatever that is. There's a fancy name for it. I don't know what it is. Okay, 5 minutes. All right, well, I let it knead in there for about 5 minutes. I don't want to do it anymore. I don't want to over knead it. So we're going to go ahead and turn this out onto a baking mat and begin doing a little bit of kneading in preparation to set it up to rise. So let's go ahead and get this out of the bowl. Definitely seems like it's set up. Feels amazing. Definitely has that window pane feel that they discuss a lot. Okay, it's got a really good feel to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ball it up here, like I saw all those really fancy people do. Like that. And I'm going to put it in a bowl that I've put a little bit of oil in, and then turn it over, and we're going to let that rise for an hour. So let's go ahead and get this in the bowl, and we'll see about getting some rising happening. And let's go ahead and put our dough in there. We're going to put it in top side down to start with. And then we will just flip it over and make sure it's all nice and oiled. Okay, so with it as it is oiled and ready to rise, it's a nice warm kitchen. So I'm just going to spread the oil around across the top, and we're going to let this sit for 1 hour and rise. And I guess we'll see you back then. 1 hour. It's supposed to double in size. That's what we're looking for. Hopefully we'll see that. So we'll be back in a bit. All right, we're back, and look how much this thing has risen. It's crazy. So I guess the next thing we need to do is punch it down. Now, of course, it's not necessarily punching, but it is pressing on it to make the bread fall. Then we'll take it out. We'll put it on the bread mat with a little bit of flour on it. And then we will knead it a little bit to get the air out. And then we will break it up and put it in the loaf pans for the second rise. All right, let's punch it. Look at that bubble. That was just so satisfying. Look at all the bubbles in it. Okay, let's get it out. And a little flour. Let's turn it out and do a little kneading. Look at that. Something so satisfying about that. More flour. I think I had a little too much oil in there. It feels so amazing. It's like velvet. I love it. Okay. So this is the method I saw in the videos. You kind of pull it, fold it back, and press it, and roll it against the and you should hear some squeaking and popping as the air comes out. Ooh, you hear that? So, there we go. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to cut this in half, and then we're going to form it up to go in the loaf pans. Okay, form this up into little balls. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to press it with my hands out a little bit and form it into a triangle, and then we're going to roll it up like a jelly roll. Now we want this to be the width of the pan when we go to roll it, so that way when we're done rolling it, that it fits right nicely in the pan. Alright, so there I have a triangle of about the right size, and we're going to start rolling it. We're going to roll it, and we're going to kind of compress it as we roll it. And then I'm going to tuck in the ends, and then I'm going to drop it in the pan. Okay. And we'll form up the second loaf. Okay. There we have our 2 loaves. They are ready for their second rise. Let's go ahead and add a little bit of plastic wrap to that. Okay, while this is going through its second rise, we're going to preheat the oven to 375 degrees. See you back here in a half hour. Alright, it's been rising, second rise, for quite a while actually, more than a half hour. But looks like it's pretty amazing. Look at this. It's crazy. Now, a couple of things I wanted to do that were not in the recipe. I bought a bread lame. If you don't know what a bread lame is, it's basically a razor blade on a stick. And it allows you to make decorative slices in the top of your bread without putting any pressure on it and thus flat, basically deflating it. So I want to, at least on one of them, I want to slice it down the middle and make a nice middle slice. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little egg wash on the top of it. Now, one of the things, this recommendations I got was to get an in-oven thermometer. And I've come to realize that my oven is not very well calibrated, because I had it on 375 and it only heated to 350. So I've bumped it up a little bit. It's finishing preheating. But in the meantime, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the tops of these 2 loaves of bread, and then I'm going to put a little egg wash on them. And by then, I think we're going to be ready to put them in the oven for 45 minutes. I'm super duper excited, as if you can't tell. So let's go ahead and unwrap. Ooh, it's sticking a little. We need to be very careful so that we don't deflate the bread as we're pulling this off. That would be a disaster, and I would be very unhappy. Okay, I think we succeeded with this one. Let's go ahead and get the next one. One of the things they say is to oil the wrap. I did not oil the wrap. Now I know why. So, before we make our next bread, we will oil the wrap properly. We were still able to gently enough remove that. Let's go ahead and cut the bread. So here's my lame razor blade. Slice it down the middle. Is it deflating? Please don't deflate. Okay, I'm not going to do it on both. I'm afraid it started to slightly deflate, and I don't want that to happen, so we're going to leave that one cut. We're going to leave this one uncut and see what the difference is. Let's get a little egg wash on here. Let's do it gently, since this one's already been compromised a little bit. I hope it is anyway. This one is going to be much fluffier on top anyway. The other one appears to be falling. That is so sad. Well, we will file that away and research why that happened and figure out how to avoid that in the future. Alright, so we now have our bread cut. As you hear, our oven is preheated. So we're going to put these in on the middle rack for 45 minutes and then we'll see what happens. Alright, I'll see you back then. I'm kind of thinking this is done. It feels like it's done. Smells like it's done. I actually took a temperature of it. It's not 190, but it's pretty high up there. I think it's done. We're going to take it out. Look at that. Isn't that amazing? It looks pretty phenomenal. Now what I'm going to do to it now is I'm going to take a stick of butter and I'm going to rub it all over the top. Sure is hard and crusty.
Perfect.
Yeah, nothing I love more than melted butter on top. Okay. We're going to let that sit for about 10 minutes. Then we're going to extract it from the pan and put it on this cooling rack we have and let it cool down. So we'll see you back here in about 10 minutes. Alright, here's the bread. I took it out of the oven about 10 minutes early. So 35 minutes at the temperature it was at. It looks done. I took the temperature of it with a thermometer and it said it was 165, which is a little light, but the crust was getting brown. I was afraid I was going to burn it. So I went ahead and took it out. We're going to see how good it is. It's been sitting in the loaf pans for about 10 minutes. We're going to go ahead and take them out of the loaf pans and let them cool on this cooling rack here. So let's go ahead and do that. See what we get. Looks like they're ready to come out of the pans without much struggle. So that's a good thing. Check here. Oh my goodness. Look at that. Sounds hollow. That's what it's supposed to sound like. Look at that. I almost can't believe my eyes. Alright, let's go ahead and get this other one out and we will leave it on the cooling rack to cool for a while. I think this one just come right out. Look at that. Just came right out. Now that one's a little shorter. That's the one I scored with the bread lame. It didn't do what I imagined it was going to do by scoring it. So we'll file that away as a lesson learned. But other than that, I think we've done pretty well here. Let's give these about 15 minutes to cool off. And I think we're going to have to dig into them because they look just too amazing to let sit. So I'll see you back here in about 15 minutes for a taste test. All right, I'm super excited. We're going to cut this and we're going to give it a first try. I can't hardly stand it. Let's do it. Oh my goodness. Look at that. Oh, it smells amazing. Let's get some butter on this. Still a little warm, so the butter is going to melt. Look at the inside. Nice. Soft. Amazing. I'm going to try this now, okay? I think that's probably the most amazing bread I've ever eaten in my life. So good. I'm so excited about this new hobby. we're going to keep doing this, I think. Definitely it's paying off right now. I've never eaten bread that good. I'm sorry, I'm a little buzzed because guess what? Oh, by the way, it's 2 minutes till midnight. Happy New Year. Hopefully 2021 is going to be a great year for all of us. But for my buzzed kitchen and my amazing bread, I want to wish you all a Happy New Year. And thanks for stopping by. You'll be seeing more of these episodes, I'm pretty sure. In the meantime, I'm going to get back to eating this bread because it is amazing. All right, we'll see y'all later.